The Doctor is racing through the corridors of the TARDIS, looking through various rooms including the library, swimming pool and the bedrooms belonging to previous companions. He's searching for a small orb with white wings that has an annoying high-pitched voice and is flying amok in his ship. The Doctor manages to catch it with a leather doctor's bag and traps it. He returns to the console where Louisa was handling the controls. The Doctor asks Louisa why her hand is on that lever. She says he told her to hold it when during flight and then asks her to let go. Then the TARDIS shakes like a violent earthquake and the Doctor discovers that they are falling through space. His only advice to Louisa is to hang on for dear life. On the planet Caliver, King Dal was getting frustrated with the peasants, raging and moaning that their huts were being destroyed by some unknown thing. Queen Kamati, who was the more reasonable part of the dynasty, tries to persuade him and reconsider helping them. King Dal just scoffs at this. He'd taken over the kingdom from his late father and his grandfather before that. The desire to keep the riches and jewels means so much to him. Throwing it out for the poor, it makes him want to take his own life and hand over to his brother who just lusts after the handmaidens. Suddenly a loud crashing sound had shaken his kingdom and he races to a window to see what's going. He sees a wooden blue box has crushed his drawbridge and landed in his moat. King Dal blew a gasket and let off a loud manly scream. He recruited some of his guards and moved forth to the moat. The Doctor opens the TARDIS doors and water entered the interior much to his annoyance. Louisa followed suit and accidentally trips up only to land face first into the moat. King Dal's guards surround the two and the Doctor in his occasional cynical manner says hello. The guards pointed their spears to his face and the Doctor just moves his head back. Louisa emerges from the moat and spits water on one of the guards. The guards force her up and pointed the spears to their faces. King Dal emerges from the castle entrance, red in the face and fuming. The Doctor bows to him and King Dal tells him to shut up. Louisa was confused and asks the Doctor if they were in the Middle Ages. Then she points at the guards. They had purple skin and black markings all over their faces. She just thinks it's war paint, but the Doctor explains that they're an alien society and Louisa just sees them as ruthless barbarians. King Dal orders the guards to imprison them and speak to them later. Outside King Dal's castle lies a small farming village filled with alien creatures that supply food resources for the villagers. Gunky teal milk and spit roasted birds that's the size of a goat. The villagers felt a small earthquake coming from the south and witnessed the wraith of a large maggot-like worm. It devoured everything in sight and crushed a few villagers during the rampage, exposing their guts and everything. The Doctor is in a small cell that's built in the floors of the castle. He sees Louisa dressed as a handmaiden and gives him something small and doughy to eat. He asks what's going to happen next. Louisa says King Dal wants her to perform some entertainment in his court and he's excited about it. The Doctor sighed and rolled his eyes. Then Louisa starts shaking her cleavage. The Doctor tells her to stop. He doesn't want to be entertained and out falls a key. Louisa shushes the Doctor and flees back to the court. The Doctor has got the key and unlocks the cell grate. It's time to meet King Dal. Louisa was performing some sort of belly dancing in front of King Dal. He's clapping away, giggling and bouncing up and down in his throne like an overexcited child. Queen Kamati was sitting next to him with her hand on her face, looking embarrassed by her husband's behavior, and tries to distract herself by looking at a ghastly painting of her husband naked with a sunset behind him. The Doctor sneaks into the court dressed as a fortune teller and puts on a high voice. King Dal shouts him over and asks him what he does. The Doctor replies by saying he could read future and grabs King Dal's right hand to examine his palm. King Dal was intrigued and starts saying that he getting richer for years to come and get married again, much to Queen Kamati's chagrin. The Doctor asks King Dal to cross his palm with silver. King Dal laughs and says no. The Doctor then says cross his palm with gold. King Dal said no again. The Doctor says crystals. King Dal was getting frustrated, says no for a third time, and then the Doctor says coal. King Dal replies that he hasn't heard of coal and removes the Doctor's disguise. He's aghast that the fortune teller was a man and that it was someone he imprisoned just recently. The Doctor enters the middle of the court and pulls out a yellow yo-yo, doing tricks to keep the mood up. King Dal shouts at his guards to kill the Doctor and they rallied around the Doctor. Then the Doctor sees something through the stained glass windows, points his finger out and shouted to King Dal. The large maggot-like worm burst through the castle wall and consumes King Dal whole. The guards start throwing spears at it and the worm then scrappers out of sight. The guards gave up trying to kill the worm and went back to the banqueting table to have hot drinks. Queen Kamati approached the doctor quite pleased, saying she hated her husband's guts and savage comments on his rulership. The doctor was concerned that a giant worm was rampaging round the area and his mind was set of finding what's going on. Louisa asks the doctor if he's going to hunt the worm. The doctor said he'll look for it but not kill it, and that's final. Queen Kamati then proposes the doctor that he'll need Ivanov, a ruthless bounty hunter with a massive libido, and Louisa's answer was, is Ivanov ripped? Louisa quietly chuckled at this, but Queen Kamati gave her a stare and Louisa kept quiet. The doctor meanwhile just rolled his eyes again and muttered to himself. Queen Kamati attached a note to a winged messenger creature to contact Ivanov and let it free, but the guards shot arrows into it and it fell to the ground. Queen Kamati sighed in annoyance and asked one of the handmaidens to get another one. She let the winged creature free, gave a death stare to the guards and made one of them pissed in fear, which trickled out the bottom half of his armor. 2 hours later, a being on a scaly mammal creature arrived in front of the castle and was greeted by Queen Kamati. Ivanov had arrived and Queen Kamati introduced him to the doctor. Ivanov greeted him by slapping his hand on the doctor's back, nearly knocking him to the ground by his immense strength, and then Ivanov turned his attention to Louisa. The doctor asked him if they would carry on with the journey and find the worm. Ivanov agreed as long he takes Louisa with them, and she instantly says yes to this. Ivanov and some of the guards lifted the TARDIS onto a cart and Ivanov's steed was attached ready to pull the load. The journey to find the worm had begun and the doctor had to walk on foot while his companion were on the steed with a very suave Ivanov doing small talk. After many hours of traveling, with no sign of the worm and with dusk setting in, Ivanov suggests they set up camp. Ivanov set up a tent and invited Louisa in, but said to the doctor that it can't fit 3 people in. So the doctor set up his own camp using a parasol, a beach chair and a tartan blanket from the TARDIS. As the night processed, the doctor was starting to read The Time Machine by H.G. Wells when Louisa started screaming from the tent and she emerged out full frontal nude towards the doctor. The doctor quickly reacted by throwing the tartan blanket at her to cover up, and Ivanov came out also nude. She says to the doctor that Ivanov's penis started talking to her during their interaction. The doctor debunks this as a load of rubbish, and then Ivanov's penis starts wriggle, then spoke to them. Ivanov introduces his talking penis, who's called Bob. Apparently during his birth some of his brain matter got lost and somehow ended up in his crotch. As he grew older his penis started becoming more anamorphic and became his consciousness for the rest of his life. Ivanov says it's really distracted to get laid with women when Bob starts getting suffocated between the woman's legs, as he innocently puts it. Louisa decided to sleep with the doctor and Ivanov can return to his tent with Bob. The doctor was apprehensive by this and tries persuade her not to. But Louisa just climbed on the doctor like a cushion, still nude with the tartan blanket on her. The doctor tried to continue reading The Time Machine in an awkward position, but with Louisa drooling on his suit and Ivanov along with Bob snoring, he gave up and attempted to get some rest. The next day the journey had continued. Louisa was now skeptical of Ivanov and his talking penis Bob, and yet Ivanov continued to apologize to her after last night, making him feel a bit vulnerable to his disliking mentally. The doctor was observing the trail the worm had left. A lube-like slime that smelt of athlete's foot, and the ground was dug like a one-wheeled tank had powered through. An hour later they encounter a destroyed village. Slime was everywhere and a dozen peasants were either eaten or flattened by the attack. They stopped just outside the village and Ivanov presents the idea to trap the worm. The doctor agrees but not to kill it and desires to examine it himself. He wanted to its motive if it was lost, confused or something else that may not what it seemed. Ivanov protested against this and wants to kill it, massacre it and have the head as a trophy. This leads to a physical conflict between the two and Ivanov sets onto the doctor. Ivanov wrestles him to the ground and tries to kill him. Louisa intervenes and tries to rip off Ivanov's codpiece. Bob suddenly emerges and tries convince Ivanov not kill her accomplice. Ivanov settles down and has a heart-to-heart conversation with Bob. Ivanov then softens and the doctor convinces him that violence, death and destruction is not the perfect solution. The doctor then mentions conflicts, wars, even the Daleks as a source of experiences he had faced for nearly 1,000 years. Then there was a large growling sound. The worm had appeared from the ground and it was fierce. The doctor and Ivanov reached for a large net and caught it. The doctor knelt beside it to communicate with it. Ivanov hesitantly raised a sword and stared at it. The doctor persuades Ivanov not to kill it and Ivanov throws the sword in front of the doctor. The worm wasn't wriggling or moving, just still, and was making groaning sounds like a beached whale. Ivanov was still on two sides. Kill the worm or not kill the worm. The doctor stood up and tells Ivanov that even lives were at stake. He even points to his companion that he cares for her. But creatures native to the planet do have a place of living. It's their DNA and not immigrated from a galaxy 4 million miles away to cause havoc by means necessary. Ivanov pondered this, and then Louisa points at the worm. The worm had died from not continuously moving as its biology required it to. The doctor was a bit saddened by this and removed the net. Ivanov watched him and came to the realization that even him and the doctor had killed the creature, but unintentionally. The doctor tells his companion that they are returning to the castle and that the worm will just decay as time goes on. The doctor and company returned to castle where Queen Kamati was waiting, and Ivanov declared that the worm was killed, waving his sword in the air as a sign of glory, but in reality nature had taken the victory, and the doctor raised his eyes at this, thinking Ivanov was the hero. After the celebration, the doctor decides to leave. Queen Kamati diverts to him to the court where a ceremony was starting and was presented with a medal. The doctor, Louisa and Ivanov stood in front of a crowd. Queen Kamati gave a speech about bravery and courage. She presented the medals and put them round their necks, praising them. The crowd cheered. Louisa along with Ivanov were pleased, while the doctor, thinking in his head, was burdened by the result of the capture of the worm and that there should have been another way.